refer to Kathy's mom. Right? You would have to know my mom because she's almost identical to Kathy. So my mom was like Kathy, just incredibly involved. Just a real spark. Her nickname was Sarge. I think your name was Sarge too. I mean, that's kind of what
when I worked, that's what the men called it.
Well, you're always working, and that's really the main part of this is talking about how incredibly important is grassroots efforts. You probably heard me say this before, but there's no way I'd be a United States Senator were it not for the grassroots effort. I mean, I came down here. It's kind of a surreal experience to come here 4 years ago. Didn't even decide to run until literally about 4 years ago. It was after Tommy Thompson decided not to run at that Tea Party speech. I was on the stage with him in Madison, and decided to run. Announced, a week before convention, came down here. Didn't have a room for me for hospitality suites, so we just had the table set up. And by the way, Chris was nice to say, yeah. Everybody said, hey, the new senator's got food up there.
Yeah.
So I thought it was my magnetic personality and boyish good looks, but it was really the food that apparently won the hearts and minds. But the fact that I could start that late for a United States Senate race and still win is really extraordinary. And it's extraordinary not because I won, it's you guys won. The fact that we had this grassroots effort that was ginned up by the support for Scott Walker, and somebody like me can tap right into it and win. It tells you something. It's that grassroots effort that not only wins the elections, but is what we need to win the hearts and minds of the American public. And it's just crucial we do that, because you guys, I don't have to depress you with a PowerPoint presentation and tell you really the challenges facing this nation. But they're severe. And we're gonna only win the hearts and minds of the American people one person at a time. And it's going to be people talking to friends and family and neighbors, people that don't agree with them. We're happy to preach to the choir, but boy, we got to start talking to people that don't necessarily agree with us. We have to embrace them. We can't, as conservatives or Republicans, engage in purity tests. This is a moment of triage in this nation. There are going to be a lot of issues that we're not going to agree with people. Even people who are going to try and get elected. We need to agree on the big issues, the top priority issues, the fact that we're losing this country, the fact that we're mortgaging our kids' future. Those are the types of issues we've got to find individuals that will agree us at least on those issues. And get them out the polls so we can win elections, so we get some serious-minded individuals in Washington, D.C. start enacting solutions. One of the things I've been talking about for the last couple of years, truthfully, because I see a lack of seriousness. I see a lack of information, a lack of knowledge. So one of the things I'm always talking about, what's the first step in any problem-solving process? First got to admit you have one, right? And you have to go through that. And a lot of people, you got to hit rock bottom, finally realize, okay, I can't deny it anymore. I've got a problem. Well, our issues, there aren't enough politicians in Washington, and quite honestly, there aren't enough citizens that are admitting we have a problem. And we're certainly not properly defining it. Until you go through those first two steps, it's pretty hard getting the American people to support the types of solutions we're going to have to enact if we're really going to solve the problem. We can paper over these things. We've been papering over these problems. Right now, we're papering over with artificially low interest rates. But that, we know, cannot go on forever. So again, this is about person-to-person contact. This is about person-to-person persuasion. This is about informing, persuading, winning the political argument, and then winning elections, and then continuing to perform or to inform, persuade. Because as you elect officials, people, individuals that are serious enough that are willing to take the risk politically to enact tough solutions, they're going to need support. And they're going to need long-term support. And again, that all occurs at the grassroots level in what you're doing. Now, from my standpoint, overall, the election structure that I foresee moving through 2014 and then beyond. One of the reasons, and it was a huge loss for Wisconsin RPW, Reince Priebus. It was a huge gain for America. And he's taken what he did here in Wisconsin, which was set up that structure that I was able to tap into to win, he's taken that same attitude to Washington, D.C. He's literally saved the RNC financially. He has. And then he's done a fabulous job, I think, of doing a postmortem on 2012, recognizing really what our weaknesses were in terms of election mechanics. And one of the big weaknesses were as Republicans, because we don't have the ongoing support of the media, of our education system, of the unions. You know, for far too long, there aren't very many examples like Jim and Kathy, where they're just always involved. They're just always got Washington County up and running. But that's what we have to do. That's what the left does. They're always involved. They're in the communities. They're buying people pizzas. They're filling out their ballots. You know, they've got, you know, we always made fun of this community organizer. Well, that community organizer beat us twice. And he's destroying this nation having won. So we've got to get every bit as involved. So I think the game plan here for 2014, I want to do everything I can to support the re-election of Scott Walker and support the election and re-election of members to this Assembly and the State Senate. I've been doing that really since, you know, did everything I could to support the recall, did everything I could to try and get 10 electoral votes for Romney and Ryan. But it's crucial. We've got to obviously maintain the majorities. We've got to re-elect Scott Walker. But the day after the 2014 election, we can celebrate. We have a smile on our face. But we just keep right on working. We never stop. So certainly my game plan is whatever structure we set up together, we just maintain that structure and we just keep right on going. For the 2016 senatorial election, and to make sure this time, in 2016, the 10 electoral votes of the state of Wisconsin go to somebody who's going to actually solve these problems. Let me tell you why we're not solving the problems. Let me just tell you a couple stories of my dealings with this president. I was one of the first group of Republicans that was on the Charmer fence when got invited out to dinner. And I don't want to make light of that. I think that was a sincere attempt at President Obama. I've frequently said that if America could have collectively been a fly in the wall, they would have been heartened by that dinner. You had Tom Coburn sitting right across from Barack Obama. Politically, these guys are so far apart, but they're friends. They care about each other. It's not a bad place to start. But President Obama started out that dinner. He described the problems he saw in terms of debt deficit and the political realities of trying to fix it. He was accurate. He said, well, it's health care spending is the biggest problem we have in this nation in terms of deficit spending. Federal government is particularly Medicare. He said, you know, the problem we have in reforming Medicare is that for every dollar that goes in the system, Americans are going to get $3 out in benefits. He kind of quietly leaned over to the table of 12 senators and said, and most Americans don't understand that. Well, no kidding, Mr. President. That's because publicly the only thing I've ever heard President Obama ever say about Medicare is it just needs modest reforms. I mean, a program in 10 years will cost $1 trillion. A dollar going in, $3 going out, it requires far more than modest reforms. So, it was my turn to talk. I went right to that comment. And basically made that point. So, Mr. President, the first act of bipartisanship has to be, we've got to agree on the extent of the problem-solving process again. And then we need to collectively go to the American people in a bipartisan fashion, explain the problem, use your presidential bully pulpit, get the American public prepared for the solutions. Now, to his credit, a lot because of my prodding, I asked him to make his White House staff available to people like me. And I was part of an even smaller group of Republican senators that was working with Dennis McDonough, Sylvia Burwell, Rob Neighbors, in the White House, in Congress, trying to find those areas of agreement to at least, maybe there's not a grand bargain, but how about let's just enact some measure of fiscal restraint to at least move the football down the field. We had a meeting in the White House, a couple-hour meeting, about the last half. President Obama actually came in, participated in the meeting, sat right there. And my involvement in that was really bringing my accounting skills, my problem-solving skills to the table. And first thing I said, we're not properly defining the problem. We don't have a 10-year budget window problem. We have a 30-year demographic problem. That's true. The first 10 years, our deficit's about $8 trillion. But according to the CBO's alternate fiscal scenario, the next decade is about 31 trillion. The next decade is 88 trillion. For a whopping total of projected deficits of $127 trillion over the next 30 years. Now, we actually done our own projection, came up with about $107 trillion. So that was the projection I presented to the president in the White House. I said, Mr. President, remember, back there in the dinner, I said our first act of bipartisanship has to go and take the definition of the problem to the American people so they're prepared for the solutions. I said, Mr. President, you know what that means? That means everything would be on the table. Because we were at this stumbling block where for just $1 of spending increase, he needed a buck in taxes. So let's have an honest debate here. You show the American people numbers this large, and everything's on the table. I think you'd appreciate that fact. He looked at me and said, Ron, so the problem in showing the American people numbers this big is they're just going to throw up their hands and give up hope, which is somewhat of a legitimate point. You need to be careful about that. Trust me, I feel it all the time as I turn groups of smiling faces into frowns. But people like optimism. I wish I could provide more of it. But then he went on to say, besides, Ron, we can't do all the work. We've got to leave some work for future presidents and future Congresses. I'm thinking in my brain, I said, how about we do just a little bit? But that's the challenge we face. The political demagoguery, his community organizing, the lack of an informed population, all work to their advantage. And the only way we overcome that is with information. And then being able to disseminate that information against a structural problem of the news media, not only being not on our side, but utterly opposed and against us. Our education system, by and large, opposed and actively working against us. Certainly our entertainment media. So who's going to do it? Well, it's folks in this room. It's your friends, it's your family, it's your networks. Now, like I say, we've got a lot of structural headwinds. We've got one really big advantage. We've got the truth on our side. We really do. It's a pretty powerful weapon. We've got talk radio, pretty powerful weapon. We've got a couple very respected newsprint organizations, people like the Wall Street Journal, conveying the truth, and the truth matters, and the truth is powerful. You just got to get it in more people's hands. And again, so from my standpoint, this is so incredibly important. It's why I gave up a life I loved 4 years ago, and I'm just going to soldier on. I would, my game plan, I'll tell you, my game plan really was for 2 years, convey that information, inform, persuade, win the argument, elect somebody serious like Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, spend the next 4 years taking tough votes, getting these problems solved long term, and go home. That was my game plan. It didn't work out. So now my game plan is, well, I've already given up 6 years, I'll give it another 6. Again, it only works. And quite honestly, the only way to have a chance to give another 6 is if we execute this thing flawlessly. In the state of Wisconsin, do you understand the challenge in 2016? It is going to be an enormous challenge, which is why we start today and we don't stop. And you have no better example of how to go about doing it than Kathy and Jim. And so listen to Mom. Listen to Sarah. She knows what she's talking about. And God bless her for your efforts.